The views and opinions expressed in this video are those of the speakers and panelists, and do not necessarily reflect the position of the Ethos Institute for Public Christianity and its founding institutions and organizations.
Is Jesus God?
Migrant workers and human rights from a Christian perspective.
Marriage and family.
ISIS presents a much bigger threat.
How do we integrate the Bible with our scientific understanding?
Are you able to actually describe and articulate clearly your own sense of purpose in life?
Let me just define what is ministerial formation first. Broadly speaking, ministerial formation refers to everything that we have been talking about this whole morning. The knowing part, intellectual, the being part, spiritual formation, as well as this doing part, the service part. Broadly speaking, that's what it is. But for our particular conference, I'm only limiting to the last part, the service part. So for me, this ministerial formation in this sense is talking about equipping leaders for service. Equipping leaders for service. And I speak from my own experience. My last 40 years have been dealing with pastoring, pioneering work, overseas as a missionary. I also serve as a lecturer, educational consultant. So out of all this, I have distilled this thing that I want to cover this afternoon, right? On this ministerial formation. Our purpose, our function, why we exist as a college is precisely because there's a need expressed by the churches outside. In my research, I found that they express 4 needs. They say they want to see from our graduate. I call it the 4C. Named after me. Okay. 1, calling. They want to see graduate who knows the calling, not just Tom, Dick, and Harry. 2, second C, character. Mentioned this morning. Churches cannot afford to have more scandalous people up the stage. They need people with integrity, godly character. 3rd one has to do with competence. They must know what they are doing. They cannot just stand up and just put on a variety show like that. They want people who can perform. This is Singapore. Right? Productivity is very important. Last but not least, they talk about chemistry. Yes, we have a lot of leaders, but some leaders have no chemistry at all. They just cannot work with people. Mind you, if I were to put in marketplace language, right, we are in people-oriented industry. If we can't work with people, then why are we in this ministry? It's a self-defeat if a pastor would stand up and say that, but I don't like people. Therefore, I spend my whole day in my office doing work. It's self-defeating. So they say that our graduate must be able to perform these 4 things. Then your college is doing the right job. Otherwise, your college is not doing the right thing. They may be like what some of them say, more like cemetery, producing people full of head knowledge but cannot do the job, cannot relate with people, cannot work together as a team. That is useless. So this is a tall order for us when I came in, that they want to see these 4 things happening. I said, well, can be done one step at a time. And that's what we have been trying to do, right? So this afternoon, I want to cover the practice, why we do certain things, and what's the theory behind it, all about. Using, of course, being a Pentecostal, I use my own college, ex-college, as an example, right? And I will cover briefly. Let's talk about the historical development. One more. Oh, 1 page missing. Never mind. This is an earlier edition, I think. Same like that. But the big picture behind everything that I want to say is that theological education as ministerial formation is an evolving challenge. Things are changing. The whole world is changing. Are we up to date or not? If we are not up to date, then I think we missed the whole boat. We can talk all about how big our school is or how small our school is, but if we don't catch up with what people want, then we are just another college down the street like that. And in order to understand this, then I have to introduce you to roughly to the historical development of our own Pentecostal movement. The Pentecostal movement actually came in 1928 when missionaries could no longer stay in China, forced to come down here, and that's where they brought the Pentecostal message. And since then, the World War came, so they have to leave. And post-World War, from one congregation, they multiplied to 3. By 1950, there were 3 Pentecostal communities in Singapore. And then eventually today we see there are over 50 of them. Not all belongs to the group that I am. The group that I belong is Assemblies of God, one of the larger group, but there are others, independent, even equally large, belong to it. Right? But out of this, all these years we noticed that since the beginning, when they first came in 1928 until only in 1977, then they begin to think about formal education. All this while they have informal type of learning, short-term type. Now you must understand that Pentecostals are very pragmatic people. Get the job done. That's the number one thing. I don't care how you do it, just get it done. So they have no time for seminary training. That's why they never thought about having a seminary. They only want short-term training. But when finally, 1970, when they realized that if we don't do something, sooner or later we will be in trouble because the whole denomination will have problem. They study everywhere and then they come back and then they become more like a Baptist or more like a Methodist than a Pentecostal. So that's where they begin to sit down and say, okay, we must do something. And that's where they founded the predecessor of our college. At that time it's called Bible Institute of Singapore. Along the same line of thought, short. That's why it's called Bible Institute of Singapore. The Bible school movement is always short. Within 1 year to 3 years, that's it. Cut, work. Don't study anymore. So that was how it started. And over these last 40 years, from just 4 students at the beginning, we have moved on to over 200 students in different places studying at our college. But through the last 40 years, we noticed that there are all kinds of challenges that we face. And I want to highlight 2 of them in particular. Now only come wrong. Okay. 1 has to do with realigning with our Pentecostal theology. 2 has to do with contextualizing to Singaporean uniqueness. On the first one, when we first started, we started because there is a need. The churches grew, so therefore we need more workers. So the whole idea behind it is to mass produce as many workers as possible within the shortest time, so that they can take up all these vacancies as full-time ministers. That's how the school started. Of course, it did well initially. They got more workers, then they planted more churches. That's why there are so many Pentecostal churches around. Right? But then eventually, the world have changed, and so have the Pentecostal. On the one hand, we want it to be fast, mass-produced. That's why they take the factory model. Get everybody in, this is the curriculum, just do it, memorize everything, go out, okay, get the job done. Then on the other hand, the world have changed. People begin to challenge, is that the way to do things? Nowadays, you say A, they will say why A. So we face the same problem with Pentecostal also, that they could no longer accept what we just say, this is the way to do things. They say, why not B? You look at them, they also do like that, they also do like that. Why must you do this way? So that we have to change our model now, to begin to think, instead of just a factory model where one size fits all, we have to think a bit broader. Our own Pentecostal theology of ministry emphasizes on the 4 or the 5-fold ministry. Apostle, pastor, preacher, all those things. So if that's the case, and that was given so that they can equip more believers for service, So in other words, that means that everyone who comes to church is expected to serve, not to sit. So now the paradigm have changed. Last time we talked only about full-time minister, like me, that drop everything, just go Bible school. But now they talk about other people. Many of them, like some of you, may never end up as a full-time minister. But then you are a Christian. As Christian, you should serve God faithfully in the church, doing whatever you can, either in the marketplace or in the church leadership. So that's where we are torn in between the two. We didn't try to meet a need, mass producing, or live up to our conscience. Our theology tells us that we can stop people from learning. Previously, we have a rule. You don't have a calling, sorry, our school won't accept you. First stop. You must go for full-time ministry. Then only we accept. But now we have the people all coming to us saying that, yes, God called us, but God called us to be a lay leader, a marketplace person, not to be a pastor. Why can't I study here? So we are faced with the first challenge of how to actually accommodate this group of people. And especially among Pentecostal charismatic churches, this is a big group of people. So much so that most of our mega churches especially, they are primarily functioned by actually lay leaders. And these are the people who wanted to be trained so that they can effectively serve in their own church. That's the first challenge we faced. A second challenge we face has to do with contextualizing in 4 different areas: global awareness, ICT, information communication technology, and distributed learning, Singaporean cultural ways of thinking, and lifelong learning. Let me deal with the first. On global awareness, we know there's a challenge that we must integrate, like pointed out this morning, right? Okay, the world have changed. What are you doing as a school? Do we know what's happening in the world? Or are we buried inside Singapore culture? This is the way we do things. And then we go overseas, Vietnam, we expect to reproduce exactly Singapore style in Vietnam. Do we know what's happening there? Are we aware of what is happening? So to do that, we have to think further now. What is the trend that's happening around us? The social trend that we're talking about. Can we fit in? Do the graduate we train really know what they're doing or not? Pastoring during my early days when I was a pastor was very simple. Everything you say, yes, pastor. That was what pastoring all about. Today you say something, they will challenge you. Pastor, you say that, but I also heard this. Why must we do that? See? So we have to fit in with our social trend. We need to know what's happening in Singapore. We also need to know what's happening around the world. With globalization setting in, actually, what's happening in the whole world actually impact us. Example, last time we don't have to deal with foreign migrant workers, right? Now we have to deal with it. In our churches, we have many migrant workers coming in. They are not like the average Singaporean. They have their own woes and sorrow. How do we deal with them? It will be quite shameful and embarrassing if we stand up and say, oh, I don't know what to do. We need to speak words that encourage this people, words that bring them closer to Christ. So these are some of the social issues we need to deal with. How about the prosperity gospel? Getting more and more popular, even in Singapore. When they challenge you as a pastor, what do you think about this? So and so say this on TV. What do you say, pastor? What do we do? These are all new social issues, never heard of before. But today we need to deal with it. So what can we do? So because of all this complication, right? So finally we realized that we need to deal with this. We cannot just talk about it. We need to integrate it into our syllabus in order to make it relevant. But to make it happen, we also need to do with the second one, teachers' consciousness. Teachers need to know that the world has changed. It's easy for me as a teacher to walk into class, bring the whole stack of notes that I have been teaching for the last 40 years, and just rehash out. Alright? So people ask me, Why it takes so long to prepare? You have been teaching for so many years. Yes, I have, but the world have changed. I cannot use the same thing and teach the same thing every year. And the students have also changed every year. They are changing. So they ask different questions. So I have to upgrade myself to be globally conscious of what's happening in the world. Some smart aleck in the class will just pop the question to you, and then you don't know what to do. See? So that's the other part. Teachers need to be globally conscious. A third one has to do with global atmosphere. We like to be, usually it's like that in most schools, even in church, the same thing. Singaporeans will all gather together, international will gather in one group among themselves, the Myanmar here, the Burmese here, the Thai here, things like that. Then, if that is the case, then where is this unity about Christ all about? We therefore need to gather together to have a global atmosphere in order to learn globally. Right? So that is another thing that we need to work on in our school. Next challenge that we face is on ICT, Information Communication Technology and Distributed Learning. If you were to be reading some of the journals, some of the news and things like that, actually Singapore has been voted as the most connected city in the world. Most connected, not number 2, number 1. In society, they realize this. That's why in US, they came up with the blended learning. All the other schools are all doing it. The only thing, people who are not doing it is Bible school. We are the last on everything. We have to prep the pastors what we are doing, because pastors are not used to it. It's a big deal to have PowerPoint already. But the world is not talking about PowerPoint anymore. The world are talking about apps, using apps to train, just using your phone. As I'm talking now, some of you are on the phone, some of you are on the laptop. Looks like you are listening to me, but I don't know what you're doing. Same thing in church on Sunday when you preach. They're all doing all these things. So what are we going to do with it? Instead of fighting against it, why not use it? We have so much to catch up with this. Using it to deliver our lecture, delivers our ministerial formation, whatever it is. That's something that we need to deal with. And of course, there are much hesitation here. We hesitate to do out of a variety of factors. One could be practical concern, such as, don't know how much it will cost. If we try to implement it, maybe a time bomb that the school cannot handle. Another has to do with pedagogical concern. Now we are already teachers. We have to relearn, Our fingers are too big to type, on the phone. So there is this kind of hesitant there. Resistant, in fact, is the word. To have to relearn a lot of these things to deliver, use them to deliver. And of course, last but not least is the philosophical concern. Man, we are Bible school. In Bible school, we teach, we model to the student. How on earth are you going to model on the TV? Of course, it's true. There's some truth to it. There's this fear of lost face-to-face contact. That sometimes it may become very impersonal. It's just like the young generation now. They don't talk to you. They just text to you. They are doing the job. They're talking to you, except through text. Add in a few more emoticons, that's all. How about us? What are we going to do as a teacher? It's not easy for many of us to try to relearn all these things. We already spent so much time to study theologically to be qualified. Then now we have to relearn everything from the beginning. Some of these tools that we wish we don't need to use it. To carry a laptop is called a big deal for us. For the young people, they won't even look at it. We still look for our old, where is my CD? Like that. No, they won't talk about CD. Nobody talk about that. They talk about cloud computing and everything. See? But then, if we were to keep up, we need to catch up. And that's the big challenge for my college. Many of my colleagues were a bit of the other side, okay? Not the younger side. So it's a big challenge for them to try to do that. And then there's a third one. The third one has to do with Singaporean ways of thinking. Our own cultural way of thinking, of doing things, it's a little bit different from other people. For example, generally, like most of us here seated, right, Singaporeans are very passive in learning one. They may just laugh a little bit, that's about all. Very few, it's just like question time, very few people will put up hand to ask question. Very few. That's the way we are, Singaporean. By and large, our society is like that. And then if you come from English educated, quote unquote, right? English educated, then you are a little bit better in certain ways than other people compared with the Chinese educated. English educated are more used to abstract philosophy. You know, we study some of the past Greek philosopher, everything like that. So we are a little bit more used to it. But come to the Chinese side, when you train Chinese, they don't think like that. Who cares what the Greek philosopher think? Huh? Or your ism this morning, who cares? They never have heard of it in the Chinese school before. They don't care. So you were to teach theology using all the ism, they can't be bothered. Shut up. They memorize because they need to pass the test. That's about all. Beyond that, doesn't affect them. So imagine this person would become later on graduate and become a pastor. What do you expect? That's how sometimes we face problem with in the church. I've been a pastor before. I know we have workers who cannot work with us because they think differently. They operate on a different wavelength. While we are on channel 8, they are on channel 5 or CNA. Totally different, you know. So how do we deal with this type of people? All right. And the success of minister formation often hinges on how well our teachers actually adapt to the learners themselves. If the learners are like that, then teachers, we have to adapt like that. Otherwise, we are hitting far above them. I mean, you can have a sermon, you preach all $50 worth one, but your congregation is all from Chinatown. What do they know? At the end, is a pastor, very impressive. That's all they can say. Nothing benefit them. And so we have to gauge where we are, who are we teaching, and adapt accordingly. Singaporeans are very, very different. But in classes, because we are trained from the West, right? Like they say, most of us are trained from the West. In the West, to learn means to ask questions. That's why we keep asking you, yes, you have a question? No question. Shall I ask you a question? Most teachers do that. Coming from a Western viewpoint, that's called learning. But coming from Singaporean Chinese viewpoint, that's offensive. You're intruding in my own privacy. Like I say, I learn to learn. I love to learn in quietness. What's wrong with that? See, so we have to somehow or other get across to our own teachers that we need to adapt. They think differently. They are not like us. A different generation also think very differently from us. And then of course, this morning is a good example. There's a tendency to assume that just because you got a PhD, you know everything. You can teach already. So we get all the PhD and all the Master of Theology coming to teach for us, or a DMin for that matter. Yes, they have all the academic qualification, but have they learned anything about teaching? Don't have that. You go to a bank, you ask him, are you a banker? The first thing you ask them, have you taken professional banking? Yes. Oh, then say yes. You go to a clinic, so you are a doctor. Have you taken medicine? Yes. But we come to us, what have you? You are a teacher. So have you learned anything about teaching? No. It's a very wrong presumption to to presume just because we have studied theology, therefore we know how to teach. But the world is changing slowly. In Germany, actually, you cannot become a professor unless you are trained as a professor. In the UK, they're also changing that. They require minimum a certificate in teaching. But in Singapore, seminary, we operate differently. Only the MOE told the line. Everybody must go to IE there to learn. But here we don't. We assume we know. So because of that, therefore, sometimes when we ask people to go to attend seminar like this type, it's a good example. How many of us actually go? You can tell how many of your faculty are here. I can also tell how many faculty here. Because they're not interested. I'm only teaching this theology. Why you ask me to attend this education conference? What has it got to do with me? See? So that become another problem for us. Added to this, there's the lack of sensitivity to Singaporean high context culture. Literally high context culture. That in the high context culture, actually they prefer to move in group and think in group. But the way we do things is very different. If we already examine our own course syllabus in our school, you will see almost every course syllabus outline, all the assignments are practically individual assignment. In Singapore, it's like that. You want to pass, prove yourself. But the MOE is gradually changing. Now they recognize. That's why in primary school they begin to think about group project now. That is Singapore's way of doing. Community is important. You don't make a decision by yourself and get away with it. You have to think of your community as well. So that's why Singaporeans are very unique. We know how to adapt. So we use a hybrid. Come to your class, okay, you are a Western teacher. I talk loud so that I can score a point. But when it comes to relationship outside, I become a Chinese. I call my elders. Before I make a decision, I ask my elders first. We know how to adapt, but unfortunately in school we don't know how to adapt with that. So we have some of our Chinese students actually quite offended because we treat them like Western English educated students. But that become a challenge for us. Last but not least, another challenge is this one, lifelong learning, holistic view of lifelong learning. For many of us, we think that learning is actually for the sake of getting a job. That's generally what it is. But actually learning is more than getting a job. Learning is a lifetime, self-fulfilling what you hope to know and achieve. So there are two sides of the coins. And we need to train our students also, graduate, to have the same idea. So that they don't just graduate and say, okay, I have finished my master. So I'm now a pastor. Full stop. I don't need to study anymore. But the world is changing, but they don't want to study. So in response to all these things, therefore, the college decided to move in response in 4 ways. One, we need to be flexible. We acknowledge that God has created us differently. Some are called to be full-time pastors, some are just called to be lay leader. But both are loved by God. They should know the word of God. So we should not discriminate them by saying, sorry, you cannot come to school. So we have to open our door to allow both kind of students to enroll. And that is a major adjustment for us. Very, very difficult for us. So last time we used to have all full-time people in class, so we can talk differently because we are all full-time. But now we have lay people who are inside. So something is quite difficult, they don't quite understand. But then we have to be flexible in order to accept them. Right? The flexibility is important. So from first a factory, now we move on to become a learning community. In a learning community, just like in Acts chapter 2, the people just gather, they study the word of God, and God lead them on. It was God who brought the increase as they study together. So it was not something that we program and push them to do something like a factory like that. So that become a major change for us to accept accept now lay people in the college. And we have to change so much until now, actually, if we go to a college, we have classes every night, Monday to Thursday. 3 classes at one time. Because the lay people are hungry for it. And for Pentecostal charismatic especially, most people do not want to be full-time minister. They just want to be lay minister, wealthy lay minister. That's how they want to work. At the same time, they want to study and serve God. So to accommodate that, we have changed our whole structure. Except for the crash classes, which have to be in the day, the rest are all installment by night. The world have changed, so we have to adapt to that. Next is integration. We mentioned earlier, we have to intentionally integrate into each module, each course that we teach, global awareness. We don't just talk about what's happening in Singapore or what happened in the Bible time. We have to talk about, in view of these things, how do we address the issues that are happening around the world. Of course, we say, like, for example, in Singapore, we don't have so-called much social injustice. But you have students coming from Philippines and elsewhere where it is outright there. So we need to address this type of issue so that when they graduate, they go back to the church and the church asks them to lead a Filipino congregation. They know what to do. The global awareness is not just something, an option. It is here and here to stay. We have to address it. So that becomes a tough job for the teacher. We need to encourage our teachers to be globally conscious. Please read a little bit more. Beside your textbook, beside your theology, on world news, what's happening. So that in class you can interact even with global issue happening there. And the third thing that we try to do here will be exploration. Exploring the use of ICT. Like I mentioned before, it's quite difficult. It's like the saying says, it's difficult to teach old dogs new tricks. That's how difficult it is. Young teachers, no problem. Older teachers, big problem. But the world have changed. Young and old, we need to, if we want to continue serving, we need to upgrade ourselves. So the school provided all of us a laptop, conducted special lesson on what is Edmodo, what is sociology, what all the etymology terms like that. Then we have to learn how to post our assignment online, how to chat online with students, everything. It's a tough one, I tell you. It's easy to talk about blended learning, but it's very tough. But it's needed. Students are enjoying, our feedback is very good. They say, wow, we salute you, teacher. You make effort to learn. You're not staying off of it. Then, of course, there is an adaptation here, where we talk about training, workshop, and everything that we need to provide for them. We especially, just like this morning and that, we encourage all our teachers and staff to come here for workshop and that. We cannot just, not I work, you shop, that type of workshop. Okay? We have to all come here. Learn something new. If you don't know why we are doing this thing, then how are we going to teach the people? Our mentality, mindset will change the way we do. Okay? In the end, there are some future directions that we hope to work on. One has to do with managing now curriculum or hidden curriculum. What sometimes is not spoken, not taught, or implicitly taught can be louder than the actually taught. For example, if we say, we value you, you are a lay person in the marketplace. However, we have no class for laymen. Then that directly tell you, you don't value already. So that part we have to manage it. And then also another part that we're working on is now how to deal with real life experience credit. In the West, it's actually very popular. But in Singapore, nobody accepts that yet. You have been working 10 years as an engineer. How can we honor that? It's a very tough one. Another one has to do with developing collaborative courses with pastors and actual practitioners out there. We do have some, like we mentioned, all those team and all these things, internship, but we don't have one that actually we will actually spend time. For example, maybe half the course in class, half actually in the church. If we talk about self-group ministry, why not first half theory, second half actually leading a self-group in the church? Then they can interact with the pastor, come back with feedback, and then we have both. So that is something that we are working on, that we're finding it quite quicker. Most pastors are busy, no time to help you supervise. But we need to work on that. And at the same time, we need to create learning space. This is something that quite tough for busy Singaporean. Stopping time, coffee break, etc. We talk with students. It's very tough for us because so many assignments to do on our own, marking paper, everything. But if we are in the people industry, talking to people is more important than marking your paper. What's the use of marking your paper, but in the end you never talk to your student? Students have a need, nobody talk to. They talk to their friends, no solution, and they say this school is lousy. So when they graduate, they will say, yeah, the school only care about marks. See? So we need to create this type of learning space for our students and teachers to spend time together to deal with it. Last but not least, the fear of using ICT and distributed learning is very real. But we need to manage it. If loss of faith are concerned, maybe really blended learning is a good way. If teachers have no confidence, then we need more workshops to help them build the confidence. At the end of the day, is what we do. If we can constructively align them with our learning objective, it still can be done. So my final word is, no more. That's it. Didn't come up. As I said, the big idea is theological education is an evolving challenge. It's up to us what we want to do. And that's what we have been trying our best. We're not saying we have arrived. We have many challenges ahead. But we cannot stop there and think that that's the only way to do things. We need to move with time. Thank you.